The following video is intended for mature audiences. It contains horror elements, adult themes, and language that might not be suitable for younger viewers. Descending dread. With each step down the creaky stairs of the abandoned factory, my fear grew. The musty smell of old earth filled my nostrils as I descended into the dark cellar. My lantern barely lit the way as I ducked under beams and dodged turns. The air felt suffocating, like a weight pressing down on me. As I went deeper, I sensed something sinister watching me. Panic set in as I reached a dead end and heard scratching behind a crate. A gnarled hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with a vice-like grip. It was an old woman with wild eyes. Her tattered clothes hung on an emaciated frame, her face contorted with anger. She blocked my path, gripping my arm tightly and hissing for me to leave. But it wasn't just her. The darkness around me came alive, whispering with an otherworldly force. I struggled to break free, but her grip was surprisingly strong. As I fell backward, shadows slithered out of the corners of my eyes, their movements unnatural. The creatures closed in, their whispers growing louder. I ran towards the exit, my heart hammering. Moonlight filtered through the trees as I burst into an open clearing. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind me. I fumbled for my keys and dove into my car, locking the door behind me. As I drove away, the image of the strange creatures and the old woman lingered in my mind, haunting every waking moment. After days of research, I discovered that the alcove was a sacred site for an indigenous tribe until settlers desecrated it, angering spirits. With supplies and a knot in my stomach, I returned to the abandoned factory. As I explored the dark corridors, my senses heightened. Suddenly, a whisper brushed against my ear, and I spun around. There was nothing behind me. I continued forward, feeling a presence looming over me. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence. Brave and stupid, I ran towards it and found ghostly figures surrounded by a faint blue light. Before I could make sense of it all, they vanished. In the dim light, a figure emerged from the shadows, with inhuman features and glowing red eyes. Paralyzed with fear, I attempted to run, but I couldn't move. When my legs regained their footing, I stumbled and fell, striking my head on a pile of debris. Disoriented, I stood, running away from the wailing sounding behind me. The creature chased me through the factory. I came to an impasse at the end of a corridor. Cornered, I grabbed a metal pipe, prepared to fight for my life. I swung at its head, the metal making full contact with its skull, disorienting the creature long enough for me to find an exit and escape to the outside. The creature gave chase, still determined to attack me, and despite my best efforts, I knew I wouldn't defeat it. Suddenly, a helicopter appeared overhead with a searchlight and megaphone ordering us to surrender. I sprinted towards the light, ignoring the pain in my head. A soldier pulled me inside just as the creature was about to tear into my flesh with its jagged claws. In time, the adrenaline wore off. We landed at a medical facility where I was lucky to be alive, despite the severity of my wounds. The soldier who had saved me stayed by my side as I recovered, offering words of encouragement. As I healed, I couldn't help but think about how close I was to not making it out alive. I felt relief wash over me, but then the memories flooded back. The creature, the chase, the attack. What was that thing? I asked one morning, a week removed from my ordeal. It's an experimental project that escaped from a nearby lab, the soldier explained. We're still gathering information. Is it dead? I shuddered at the thought of it coming after me again. Yes, we made sure of it, the soldier assured. But then he asked for my help in understanding the creature. Despite my fear, I knew I had to do my part. I didn't want anyone else to suffer the same fate. So I agreed to tell him everything I could remember about that night. As I recounted my encounter with the creature, the memories flooded back. Its effortless movements and razor-sharp claws were etched in my mind. The soldier and a doctor listened, taking notes and nodding. The doctor suggested consulting experts, but that they should be careful to not cause panic or arouse any suspicions. I continued to recover, restricted to the bare and desolate setting of a former covert military facility that had been repurposed for renegades. The walls were made of cold, hard concrete, and the floor was lined with industrial-strength linoleum tiles. The room was sparsely furnished, with only a narrow cot for me to rest on and a small metal table by my bedside. Above me, fluorescent lights buzzed incessantly, casting an eerie glow over my surroundings. It was clear that this was a base designed for secrecy and functionality, not comfort or luxury. Despite this, I couldn't help but feel grateful to be alive and under the watchful care of those in charge. Weeks passed by in a blur as I went through rigorous psychological assessments and rehabilitation sessions. Sergeant Daniels, the soldier who had rescued me, became an ever-present figure, checking on my recovery every day. He would often bring books and puzzles to keep my mind busy, attempting to distract me from the nightmares that haunted my dreams. During one of our conversations, Sergeant Daniels mentioned that the creature I encountered was not an isolated incident. There had been reports of similar encounters in different parts of the country. People were disappearing under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind only confusion and fear. It was clear that the government had been keeping this information hidden from the public. But why? What were they trying to protect? The questions swirled in my mind, demanding answers that seemed just out of reach. I grew restless, confined to the sterile walls of the medical facility. I yearned for some semblance of normalcy, for a chance to return to my life before all this happened. But deep down, I knew that my life would never be the same. The encounter with the creature had changed everything, and I couldn't simply go back to the way things were. One evening, as Sergeant Daniels sat beside me during our usual conversation, I mustered up the courage to ask him about the secrets that the government was hiding. His face tightened, a flicker of hesitation crossing his eyes. He sighed heavily before finally responding. "The truth is, there's more to this than what meets the eye," he started cautiously. "The government has been experimenting with genetic mutations and bioengineering for years. They were trying to create super soldiers, beings with enhanced physical capabilities and heightened senses." I stared at him in disbelief, my mind racing to catch up with his words. Super soldiers? Genetic mutations? It felt like I had stumbled into some sort of sci-fi nightmare. "But something went wrong," Sergeant Daniels continued. "The creatures that you encountered were once human soldiers who volunteered for the experiments, but they lost control of their humanity and became monstrous beings. The government lost control of them, and now they roam free, wreaking havoc wherever they go." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was beyond anything I could have imagined. The government had turned men into monsters, and now innocent people were paying the price. "But why keep it a secret?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and fear. Sergeant Daniels looked away, his expression heavy with guilt. "The government doesn't want the public to know about their failed experiments. They fear the panic it would cause, the loss of trust in their ability to protect the country." I clenched my fists, my anger boiling over. How could they prioritize their reputation over innocent lives? "I need to do something," I said, determination heavy in my tone. "I can't just sit here knowing what's happening out there." Sergeant Daniels nodded in understanding, his eyes flickering with a mix of admiration and concern. "I understand your frustration, but you need to be careful. These creatures are dangerous, and the government will stop at nothing to keep their secrets hidden." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the path I had decided to take. I can't just let them continue terrorizing innocent people. I have to do something to stop this. Sergeant Daniels reached out and placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "I admire your bravery, but you can't do this alone. We need a plan, resources, and allies who are willing to stand up against the government's corrupt actions." His words resonated with me. I knew I couldn't face this fight alone. I needed help, someone who understood what was at stake. "Are there others like me?" I asked. Sergeant Daniels nodded. "There are resistance groups scattered around the country, people who have been affected by the government's experiments and are fighting back. They want to expose the truth to the world." Relief washed over me. knowing that I wasn't alone in this fight. But I also understood the risks involved. The government had vast resources and would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. We would have to be careful and strategic in our approach. I want to join them. Sergeant Daniels smiled, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. I knew you would say that. I've already been in contact with some of these resistance groups. They'll be expecting us. A fire ignited in my veins, fueling me with an unbreakable determination as I readied myself for the upcoming battle. No longer a helpless victim, I had transformed into a ferocious warrior, fighting not only for my survival, but for the countless others who had been subjected to the government's cruel experiments. Their screams echoed in my mind, pushing me forward with an unrelenting fury. This was no longer just a fight for justice. It was a war against evil itself. Midnight Dash. Melissa stumbled out of the crowded club, her ears still ringing from the pulsating music. She squinted at the bright neon signs of Manhattan as she weaved her way through the city streets, the smells of champagne and tequila mingling in her foggy mind. Her dead phone was buried deep in her purse, and she was unable to hail a cab. Just when she started to feel hopeless, a sleek black car appeared from the shadows offering her salvation. The driver's rough voice assaulted her senses when he asked if she needed an Uber. Melissa eagerly climbed into the back seat, grateful for a ride. The car's interior was a mix of old and new, with hints of musty leather and a dampness that added to her disorientation. The scent brought back memories of her grandfather's antique shop, where she'd played hide and seek as a child. She slurred out her destination, the East Village. As they drove through the city, Melissa felt like she was in a hearse. The speedometer remained stuck at 0, while Jeff, the driver, seemed almost a ghostly figure in the darkness. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, humming a haunting tune as he drove, seemingly disconnected from his own body. Fear crept into Melissa's drunken haze as she attempted to make conversation with Jeff, but it was like speaking to a mere shadow instead of an actual human being. Suddenly, a burst of static erupted from the radio, its sound whispers of forgotten secrets. The car filled with an eerie atmosphere as the voices grew louder and more distinct. In the blink of an eye, the bustling city vanished, leaving behind a desolate landscape of barren trees reaching toward a blood-red sky. The pale light of the moon cast an eerie glow over everything, stripping the environment of all color and leaving it in shades of bone and ash. The air was still and heavy, weighing down on Melissa's chest like a suffocating blanket. Panic clawed at her insides as she realized she had been transported to a realm beyond her comprehension. Mr. Jeff," she stammered, her voice barely audible in the oppressive silence. What is happening? Where are we?" Jeff turned his head slowly, his eyes devoid of any human emotion, his lips curled into a sinister smile. "Welcome to the in-between, Melissa. A place where lost souls find themselves, trapped between the realms of the living and the dead." Panic coiled in Melissa's gut as she reached for the door handle, but it disintegrated beneath her touch. Jeff's eyes glinted like molten gold, his face etched with wrinkles. He spoke stories of ancient deities, rituals, and blood sacrifices, each word hardening Melissa's fear into a crystalline clarity. The Uber ride had taken a dark turn, morphing into a twisted journey through a nightmare realm. The car screeched to a halt in front of a massive monolith crafted from obsidian. Its surface pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Jeff stepped out of the car, his figure silhouetted against the ominous glow, inviting Melissa to join him on the descent into darkness. Melissa's heart pounded in her chest as she watched Jeff disappear into thin air, and though she felt a mixture of fear and curiosity, the alluring power of the mysterious void was too strong for her to resist. With a deep breath, she flung open the car door and stepped out onto the cold ground. As soon as her feet touched the earth, a jolt of energy surged through Melissa's body. The monolith loomed before her, pulsating with an otherworldly intensity that seemed to match the rhythm of her own heartbeat. Fascinated and compelled, she took hesitant steps forward, drawn closer to the source of its power. Melissa stumbled through the dark, each step forward seemingly charging the monolith, her presence somehow willing it to life. As she drew closer, Melissa noticed strange symbols etched into its smooth surface. Tentatively, Melissa reached out, running her fingers over the intricate patterns, feeling a sense of recognition wash over her. As her gaze lifted to the darkening sky, Melissa's heart lurched in horror as she spotted the grotesque forms of creatures with mangled, tattered wings descending on her. The air was filled with a cacophony of rasping screeches, each one like a sharp knife piercing her eardrums. Melissa cringed and covered her ears, stumbling backward, the weight of the moment settling heavily upon her. A soft voice broke through the pandemonium. "Melissa," it whispered, "you hold the key." Confused, Melissa searched for the source of the voice, finding no origin for the sound. Instead, a small golden key glinted in the darkness, nestled within a crevice of the monolith. Trembling with anticipation, Melissa reached out and grasped it in her hand. As soon as her fingers closed around the key, a surge of power coursed through her veins. The creatures let out a final ear-splitting screech as their twisted forms unraveled and dissolved into nothingness, their grotesque silhouettes disappearing into thin air, leaving behind a void of darkness in the once blood-red sky. Slowly, the crimson tint faded away, revealing a stunning tapestry of shimmering stars scattered across the endless expanse above. Melissa stood in awe, clutching the key. Its warm glow infused her with newfound confidence and purpose. She was aware that she now possessed the means not only to flee this realm, but also to reveal the solutions to the enigmas that plagued her own world. With determination fueling her every step, Melissa turned away from the monolith and sprinted toward the car. As she climbed back into the sleek black vehicle, she glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were no longer clouded with fear. They burned with an otherworldly fire. "Take me home," she commanded to the car with no driver, her voice clear and unwavering. The car lurched to life, hurtling through the now familiar streets of Manhattan. The key in her hand pulsed with energy, urging her onward to face the trials that awaited her. Jeff was nowhere to be seen, but Melissa knew he would be back. She had escaped, but she knew it was only a matter of time before he, or whatever he represented, would return. Until then, she had work to do. As the car pulled up to her apartment building, Melissa stepped out onto the sidewalk, keys in hand. The smell of exhaust and the city's never-ending buzz welcomed her back like old friends. She glanced over her shoulder at the Uber and shivered, certain that it was watching her with baleful eyes. Straightening her shoulders, she strode towards the safety of her building. Melissa's mind was a tumultuous swirl of memories from the night. Though still clouded by the potent mix of tequila and champagne, she felt an undeniable sense of rebirth. With the key in her possession and hanging from her neck, she was now a fierce protector, a warrior against the sinister creatures that lurked beneath the dazzling facade of the city lights. An inferno roared within her, fueled by a fierce determination to annihilate every last trace of darkness that threatened to consume her world. The wellspring. The vibrant veins of the city throbbed beneath my gaze, a pulsating display against the pitch-black tapestry of night. It's another Friday, another cycle of guiding faceless passengers to their destinations in my reliable Subaru. The engine's rhythmic drone is a soothing lullaby, contrasting with the city's relentless vitality. Then it comes, a ping. An address on the outskirts appears as an anomaly but not unheard of. Easy cash before retiring for the night. He materializes from the murky shadows of a dim alleyway, swathed in a threadbare trench coat that seems to swallow the feeble glow of the streetlights. His face remains hidden under his fedora when he opens the car door, only a sliver of moonlight betraying an eerie calmness in his eyes. "Where to?" I ask, trying to maintain my usual jovial tone despite his presence sending shivers down my spine. In a gravelly whisper reminiscent of wind sifting through autumn leaves, he says, "Take me to the wellspring." My GPS yields no results. "I'm not sure I know that place," I say, while stealing cautious glances at him through the rearview mirror. He remains an enigmatic silhouette. "You will," he replies. "Follow the signs. Let the moon be your guide." Ignoring my gut instinct telling me that something's off, I drive into the winding streets beyond the city's neon glow. The low and swollen moon casts spectral shadows that dance across the deserted roads. The only signs are cryptic messages on decaying walls. "Seek the wellspring. Baptism awaits. Lost souls find solace." As we delve deeper into this unknown territory, silence descends like a heavy cloak. It replaces the city's hum with unsettling chirps from unseen insects, and rustling wind through bare trees. My phone struggles for a signal, rendering the GPS useless. Fear tightens its grip on me. Then in the distance, a flickering light appears like a lighthouse in an abyss. As we draw nearer, I realize it's emanating from a clearing where a rundown well stands, its stone rim overrun with moss and weeds. The figure steps out, his features still concealed by the hat, and circles the well while murmuring an incantation. "What's going on?" I stammer, fear making my voice hoarse. "The cleansing," he replies. "You too are tainted. The wellspring offers renewal." Before I can react, he seizes my arm with a surprisingly strong grip and pulls me toward the well. Despite my resistance, it feels as though an unseen force is propelling me forward. He drives me relentlessly toward the precipice, his breath hot and alien against my ear, uttering indecipherable syllables in a language that twists my stomach into knots. A primal fear, raw and unfiltered, surges through my veins like molten lead, freezing me in place even as it urges me to flee. This is not a simple stumble amidst an otherwise mundane journey. It's a free fall into the abyss of insanity, where reality twists and warps beyond recognition, and the commonplace morphs into something monstrous and unrecognizable. A horrifying shriek reverberates from the depths of the well, not a human sound, but a tortured wail that feels like it could rip through the fabric of reality. My screams join in before both fade into silence. When I regain consciousness, dawn has broken, painting the sky a bruised lilac. My head throbs with fragmented memories of fear and chilling darkness. I scramble away from the well's edge, which now stands empty. No sign of him or anything unusual. Back at the city limits, my trembling hands dial up the police, who find no trace of any oddity at the well site, or evidence supporting my claims, leading them to dismiss it as an overactive imagination fueled by alcohol. But I know better. His cold touch, those chilling whispers, and the wellspring are etched onto my soul like grotesque tattoos of terror. As weeks turn into months, anxiety lingers like a nightmare refusing to end until the night I spot him again. Same trench coat, same fedora, and the same chilling emptiness in his eyes. He stands across the street watching me. His teeth under the moonlight are elongated, sharp, and glistening with a sadistic sheen. His eyes radiate an otherworldly glow that mirrors the pulsating light from a nearby well. He beckons me closer while that chilling mantra echoes in my mind. Seek the wellspring. Baptism awaits. Panic takes over and I slam on the gas, tires screeching as I speed away into the safety of a fresh day. I never lay eyes on him again, but every moonlit night brings back echoes of the wellspring. I see his face in every crowd and hear his whispers in every gust of wind. I'm forever marked by this terrifying truth. I was caught in a horrifying paradox. I know he's still out there waiting for another desperate soul seeking solace in the wrong places. I'm no longer just an Uber driver. Somehow, I've become a beacon unknowingly attracting those vulnerable to the wellspring's lure. Wings of Obsidian. On the grand stage of the Opera Garnier, Camille Dubois stood tall and regal, her voice soaring like a celestial tapestry woven with raw emotion. The audience sat in hushed awe, their eyes fixed on her as she sang, her tone captivating even the most hardened of hearts. Despite her successes and the admiration of her peers, Camille was haunted by a recurring nightmare, a monstrous raven with obsidian feathers and eyes that burned like hot coals. Its croaking voice echoed in the darkness of her dreams, promising unimaginable power and untold secrets. As she sang Ophelia's aria one fateful night, the nightmare bled into reality. The air seemed to shimmer and twist, and from the rafters above descended a raven unlike any she had ever seen, larger and more menacing than any creature of its kind. Its gaze was fixed on her, and as their eyes met, a jolt of energy shot through Camille. Her voice took on a new, chilling resonance, mesmerizing the audience, who erupted into thunderous applause. But within Camille, a darkness began to stir, a hunger for something more than mere adulation. As she continued to sing, the raven watched from the shadows, its croaks becoming whispers in her mind. It promised her power beyond imagination, fueled by the souls of her enraptured listeners. Camille's once pure voice took on a ravenous edge, twisting melodies into macabre lullabies. The audience, initially entranced by her performance, began to feel uneasy, their faces pale and drawn. A suffocating silence settled over the opera house, broken only by Camille's eerie song and the raven's ominous croaks, both performer and bird becoming one, leaving a trail of fear and chaos in their wake. As the darkness thickened, Camille noticed a movement in the corners of her vision. Soft feathers sprouted and brushed against her skin in an unsettling caress. As she gazed into the golden-framed mirrors surrounding her, she saw a frightening change in her reflection. Her eyes shone like glowing embers, and her voice developed an unearthly rasp. She clung to the purity of the melody, determined not to succumb to the alluring whispers of the raven. But as she stood on the stage, a longing stirred within her, a craving for the freedom promised by the raven's tempting words. With the darkness inside propelling her, Camille unleashed the full potential of her transformed voice. The vibrations from her song flooded the opera house, creating an eerie hum that reverberated in every space. Rather than being entranced, the audience is consumed with terror. They screamed and clung to each other. Feeding off of their vital energy, Camille gained power with each deadly note that escaped her lips. Camille felt herself succumbing to the blackbird's clutches, its influence too strong to resist. Suddenly, a frail old woman's voice cuts through the chaos with a counter-melody that speaks of ages past and enduring strength. Hearing this song of defiance, the darkness within Camille wavers. In a moment of wrenching awareness, she understands that the blackbird offers no power. It steals souls from its victims and feeds on their essences to sustain its monstrous form. Camille let out a desperate wail, fighting against the tight grip of the raven. She danced and sang, each resounding note and unchoreographed movement rebelling against the raven's dark hold, forcing it back into shadows where it belonged. The raven screeched, its hundreds of obsidian eyes casting a ghostly glow against the gilded moldings. As Camille poured her newfound resolve into the counter-melody, the raven shrank, its feathers disintegrating into a swirl of dust until it was nothing more than a wisp of smoke curling in the shadows. Camille collapsed onto the stage, her voice strained but victorious. The audience, still shaking from the experience, stood and clapped, their applause not just for the performance, but for the brave woman who had used her voice to fight against the darkness. Though forever marked by the encounter, Camille knew the darkness still lurked in the shadows, hungry for another voice to consume. But she stood ready, her voice imbued with the chilling resonance of the raven's lullaby, a perpetual symbol of the struggles she had endured and the delicate essence of humanity. Abandoned shadows, whispers of a forsaken house, shrouded in darkness and tainted by evil, echoed throughout the tiny town of Fairvale. As Emma, David, Rachel, and Mark approached the crumbling structure, the air grew thick with an ominous energy. The once grand mansion lay decaying, its windows broken and doors hanging off their hinges. Undeterred by the warnings of the townspeople, the four friends ventured inside, their footsteps muffled by layers of dust and debris. In the center of a dilapidated room, amidst scattered debris and peeling wallpaper, sat an ancient Ouija board. Its wooden surface was worn down by the years, the once vibrant letters and numbers faded with age, and the edges chipped and splintered. Despite its weathered appearance, an eerie energy emanated from the board. As they stepped closer, the planchette moved on its own accord, beckoning them to join in on the game. Curiosity and fear mingled as the group placed their fingers on the planchette. All sound disappeared, swallowed by the darkness. Shadows danced on the walls as the friends whispered incantations. The planchette spelled out cryptic messages from restless spirits. Emma's heart pounded as the planchette spelled out her name, each letter sending a shiver down her spine. In an instant, the temperature dropped and an otherworldly chill filled the room. Suddenly, the planchette shot across the board with a burst of energy, causing chaos to erupt. The ground trembled beneath them, and a suffocating darkness consumed the group, trapping them in a terrifying dimension beyond their understanding. Their hands shook with terror as they attempted to break the connection with the planchette. It refused to relent, moving on its own as if controlled by unseen forces. The spirits mocked their fear and spun tales of torment. A deafening silence fell over the room, and Mark's eyes widened in horror as a chilling message materialized on the board. One must stay. Terror consumed them as they came to the realization that the malevolent forces they had unleashed were demanding a sacrifice. Hands shaking, they pleaded for forgiveness as they watched the planchette's movements become wilder and more unpredictable. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared in front of them, its cruel intentions clear. The room filled with a sense of dread as they realized the consequences of their actions. Rachel's hand shook as she reached for the Ouija board, the planchette trembling beneath her fingertips. Her friends stood around her in a circle, their faces contorted with fear and anticipation. A cold gust of wind blew through the abandoned house, rustling the curtains and extinguishing the candles that lined the floor. As the horrifying truth dawned on Rachel, she realized that they had unleashed a malevolent being, hungry for human souls. In a last-ditch effort, she pleaded with her friends to flee while she bravely faced the dark entity alone. She uttered the chilling words, "I'll stay," sacrificing herself to save the others. Time seemed to halt and reality twisted as blood-curdling screams reverberated throughout the house. Rachel's form dematerialized into darkness, consumed by the wrathful spirit possessing her. The friends scattered in fear, their panicked footsteps echoing off the crumbling floorboards. Rachel's sacrifice would forever haunt them, a reminder of the dangers of meddling with the occult. And in that forsaken house, the malevolent force lingered, satisfied for now but always craving more souls. Emma, David, and Mark were consumed by guilt and haunted by memories of Rachel's screams in the cursed house. They couldn't shake the feeling of being observed by a malicious entity, but they attempted to continue living their lives as normal. Emma's dreams, however, were filled with images of Rachel's face and the sinister presence that took her life. Unable to bear the uncertainty, Emma ventured out on her own in search of the truth and stumbled upon a startling discovery. Emma was determined to uncover the truth about her friend's sudden disappearance, so she delved into forbidden texts and ancient lore, despite the risks involved. But as she read on, a grim revelation shook her to the core. The entity they had encountered fed on despair and claimed souls. Despite the unsettling rumors and cautions, Emma continued forward, weighed down by guilt for bringing her friends to such a perilous location. With the wisdom and cognizance of ancient legends, Emma returned to the infamous abode. The air crackled with danger as she stepped deeper into the unknown. Ghostly whispers sounded around her, enticing and warning her all at once, but armed with the knowledge of those who came before, she marched forward, determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of the notorious dwelling. Emma cautiously made her way down the dim, decaying hallway, her senses on high alert. A lingering feeling of someone's presence sent chills down her spine, as if an unseen force was silently observing her every move. The musty smell of neglect and decay filled the air, making each step feel heavier than the last. She couldn't help but wonder who or what might be lurking in its shadows. The Ouija board remained in the center of the room, untouched and undisturbed, surrounded by scattered tarot cards and half-burned candles that flickered in the dim light of the room. Emma carefully lit candles of various sizes, each one casting its own unique glow, adding to the mysterious aura. As she chanted ancient incantations passed down through generations, the air hummed with a palpable energy. Unseen forces were at work. The flickering candlelight danced across her face as she delved into the realm of magic and spirituality. It was an otherworldly experience, one that could not be fully described in words, only felt through the senses. In an instant, a spectral figure appeared before Emma, its form twisting and contorting in a grotesque display of fear manifested. It emanated from the very depths of her mind and dreams, taking root in reality, its shape both familiar and terrifying. For it was not human but something ethereal, a creature born from her deepest anxieties. Every ounce of Emma's being urged her to flee, but she was paralyzed with fear as the entity advanced toward her with an unearthly intensity. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped the ancient book, continuing her recitation of the ritual. The candles flickered, and sweat trickled down her forehead as she chanted the final words to banish the entity from our realm forever. Emma crumpled to the floor, every muscle in her body spent and screaming in protest as she surrendered to the exhaustion. She struggled to catch her breath, her chest heaving with each gasp. The sweat-soaked fabric of her shirt clung uncomfortably to her skin, a reminder of the arduous journey she had just completed. Emma's heart pounded with a surge of adrenaline as she leaped to her feet, recognizing that it was no longer safe for her to remain in the perilous situation. Exploding out of the decaying house, Still gasping like a suffocating victim finally drawing air, she sprinted away, desperate to escape the all-consuming darkness that had threatened to devour her whole. With one last glance at the twisted windows and crumbling walls of the house, she was reminded of the unspeakable horrors that had unfolded within its clutches. And even though she'd escaped with her life, every time Emma closed her eyes, the image of Rachel's tear-streaked face burned into her mind, like a hot brand. The pain of that memory, a constant reminder that some wounds never truly heal. The Whispering Woods. Enveloped by a dense canopy of trees, Sarah and Michael, two experienced campers, forged ahead on a narrow trail. The only source of illumination was the steady beam of their flashlights, casting shadows that danced and flickered on the gnarled trunks and tangled vines around them. Every step was a careful negotiation, navigating through the thick underbrush and hurtling over fallen branches. Each breath brought with it the fresh scent of pine needles and damp earth, mingled with the occasional hint of wildflowers. Despite the darkness, there was an air of adventure and excitement as they pressed on toward their unknown destination deep within the heart of the woods. As dusk settled, they found a clearing near a gurgling stream and set up camp. The crackling fire provided warmth and comfort as they shared stories and laughter, but as the flames died down and darkness consumed the forest, an unsettling silence descended. The usual symphony of crickets and rustling leaves was replaced by an eerie quiet that sent chills down their spines. They strained to listen, and then it started. A faint whispering, carried on the wind, like voices speaking in a foreign language. Sarah scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as a silly illusion created by the howling wind. But Michael's gut twisted with unease, his senses on high alert. He caught glimpses of elusive shadows darting at the edge of the firelight, disappearing into the darkness before he could fully grasp their presence. His heart pounded in his chest, a sense of impending danger creeping over him. As they sat, a bone-chilling scream pierced through the still night air. It was too close to be a mere animal or prankster. Their fear escalated as they struggled to locate the source of the ominous sound. Fearing for their safety, they gripped their flashlights and left their camp, cautiously navigating the dark woods. The sound of faint whispers grew louder with each step, beckoning them toward an unknown destination. Finally, they emerged into a small clearing, illuminated by an otherworldly blue glow emanating from a strange object in the center. In the center stood a figure cloaked in shadows, its back turned to them. As they drew nearer, it slowly turned, revealing a face twisted in a grotesque grimace. Its eyes glowed with a demon's light, and a guttural growl escaped its throat, freezing the friends in fear. Sarah and Michael's screams echoed through the dark, dense forest as they ran, their hearts pounding. Shadows flickered around them, and eerie whispers filled the air, blanketing them like a thick fog. The pair frantically stumbled through the dense thicket, their feet constantly catching on gnarled roots and scattered rocks. Sharp branches clawed at their skin, leaving behind angry red scratches as they blindly searched for an escape route. The thick foliage seemed to close in around them, making it difficult to see more than a few steps ahead. Their hearts raced, and their breath came in short gasps as they desperately sought a way out of the tangled maze of trees. With every step they took, more figures emerged from the shadows, their eyes hollow and devoid of any emotion. Sarah and Michael felt a surge of fear as they realized they were surrounded, with no escape in sight. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive and closing in on them. Their hearts pounded in their chests as they continued to run, their lungs burning and legs aching until they could run no more. They sank to the cold, damp ground, pressing their bodies together for comfort. The whispers came from every direction, growing louder and more intense with each passing second. Icy fingers brushed their skin, sending shivers down their spines as they huddled together in fear. As the night wore on and the moon rose higher in the sky, Sarah and Michael's frantic screams gradually turned to weak whimpers, the surrounding woods absorbing their cries. When dawn arrived, a group of hikers stumbled upon their deserted campsite. The fire pit still glowed red, but there was no trace of the two friends who had vanished into the dark forest. Only a single footprint leading towards the dense undergrowth hinted at their fate. The authorities searched tirelessly for any clues or evidence of what had happened to Sarah and Michael, but all leads came up empty. Some believed they had gotten lost or met with some terrible accident, but others whispered of a curse that plagued the woods, taking unsuspecting victims who dared to enter. In the stillness of the night, when the wind howls through the trees and the leaves rustle like whispers, some swear they hear cries echoing from within the dark heart of the woods, the agonizing shrieks serving as a reminder of the two souls forever trapped in its merciless grasp. Love's warrior. My eyes strained against the thick, inky darkness of my room, the only source of light a thin sliver seeping through the open door from the hallway. It barely illuminated the outline of my roommate's body, but beyond that, there was nothing but an endless void. Dampness clung to my skin and hair like a cold, misty fog. It was suffocating, and I could taste its metallic tang on my tongue. As I stretched out my hand in front of me, it disappeared into the blackness. The familiar objects in my room took on a menacing presence. My desk loomed like a hulking beast in the corner, and the posters on my wall seemed to mock me with their distorted shapes. Every inch of the room felt like it was closing in on me, making it hard to breathe. This wasn't just darkness, it was like being swallowed by an eternal night. Lying in bed, I was suddenly aware of a presence looming over me. My muscles tensed and my heart raced as I struggled to move, but I found myself paralyzed. A distant voice hummed in the background, growing louder and more sinister with each passing second. The air in the room grew colder, and I felt a weight on my chest as if someone was sitting on top of me. Panic set in as I tried to scream for help, but no sound escaped my lips. That's when I saw them, a pair of glowing red eyes staring intently at me from just inches away. They seemed to bore into my soul, searching for something. I couldn't look away, even though every fiber of my being screamed to do so. As the eyes drew closer, a low whisper echoed in my ear. "You can't escape me." The weight atop me grew heavier, and I knew that whatever was with me was malevolent. It had no intention of letting me go. Just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, my roommate stirred, and the presence vanished. The room returned to its normal temperature, and the voice faded away, leaving behind only a sense of lingering fear and unease. I woke up gasping for air, my body soaked in sweat. My roommate, Missy, lay sound asleep in the other bed, unaware of the terror I had just experienced. But even as I turned to her for comfort, I knew she would be of no help. For days I was haunted by a malevolent presence with glowing red eyes. Every time I slept, it felt like it was suffocating me, its presence looming closer and closer until I thought I would be consumed by darkness. Sleep became a luxury, and even during the day I found myself plagued by terrifying nightmares. Missy noticed the change in me, but how could I explain something so inexplicable? One night, as I tried to fall asleep, I saw Missy standing at the foot of my bed. Her eyes were open but empty, and behind her glowed those fiery red orbs. As I reached out to shake her awake, a jolt of electricity shot through me and I recoiled in shock. The presence emerged from behind Missy, showing itself for all its wickedness. Tears blurred my vision as I struggled to break the intense gaze that held me captive. My hands shook as I fumbled for something, anything to anchor me in reality. And then I saw it, a photo of my family on the bedside table. Their smiling faces brought a wave of warmth and love over me, and I clung to their image as if it were my lifeline. Their names echoed in my mind as I begged for their protection against the malevolent entity that threatened to consume me. Slowly, the red eyes faded, and the crushing weight on my chest lifted. My roommate slumped onto the bed beside me, her unconscious body a stark reminder of what had just transpired. But this was not over. The malevolent presence would surely return, and I couldn't continue living in fear. With newfound determination, I delved into research about unholy spirits and how to banish them. I sought advice from experts in the field, desperate for a solution to protect myself and my roommate. It wasn't easy, but finally armed with knowledge and a plan, I performed a ritual to banish the entity from our presence once and for all. I carefully arranged the candles in a circle on the hardwood floor, making sure each one was evenly spaced. Then, I sprinkled a ring of salt around the candles, creating a protective barrier. With trembling hands, I lit each candle and took a deep breath before starting the incantation. As I chanted the ancient words, My voice grew stronger and more confident. But with each passing second, I felt the entity resisting, pushing back with all its might. I refused to give up. I poured every ounce of my being into the ritual, fueled by determination and a sense of duty to protect myself. The room grew colder, and the candles flickered wildly, but I continued to chant with unwavering focus. I felt a surge of power coursing through me. My hands glowed with an otherworldly light, and I knew that I had succeeded in breaking the entity's hold on our room. With one final burst of energy, I let out a primal scream that echoed off the walls. The entity let out a deafening roar, and then vanished. I collapsed onto the floor, exhausted. This was what I was meant to do, to hunt down malevolent spirits and protect the innocent from their grasp. And so began my journey as a paranormal investigator, traveling the world and battling dangerous entities to bring peace to those affected by their presence. It was terrifying at times, but every victory reaffirmed my purpose and gave me a sense of fulfillment unlike any other. Despite my years of training and experience as a spirit hunter, there was one entity that continued to elude me, the one that had plagued my old apartment. I was constantly reminded of it as I traveled from city to city, vanquishing demon after demon. But then a call from an old friend changed everything. She had moved into my old apartment and was now experiencing strange occurrences. It didn't take long for me to realize that the entity had returned, and it was up to me to finally put an end to its reign of terror. Armed with all the knowledge and skills I had acquired over the years, I returned to my old haunt. The moment I stepped foot in the building, I sensed the entity's presence growing stronger. But I refused to let fear consume me. I had faced countless demons since our last encounter, and I was more than ready to face it again. As I made my way up to the apartment, a chill ran down my spine, the wicked energy radiating from within. Every hair on my body stood on end. But backing down was not an option. I was determined to confront it head-on. I reached my friend's door, my hand shaking as I touched the doorknob. The brass was cold against my skin, and I took a deep breath before turning it and pushing the door open. Inside, the room was dark except for flickering candles that lined the walls. Shadows danced around me, making my heart race with fear. But I couldn't let it control me. "Show yourself!" I shouted into the darkness, my voice echoing through the room. For a moment, there was no response. Suddenly, a low growl filled the air, followed by a cold, mocking laugh. The entity had returned, and it was more powerful than ever. My hands clenched into fists as I searched for my only source of protection, a crystal hanging from a leather cord around my neck. It was an onyx stone, given to me by my mother before she passed away. In moments like these, I could almost feel her presence with me. But even with the crystal in hand, I knew it wouldn't be enough. The entity had grown stronger, and I needed to find its weakness if I wanted to banish it from the apartment. Closing my eyes, I focused on my breathing and tried to clear my mind. And then I heard it. A faint whisper, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. The entity was vulnerable to love. I opened my eyes and stepped forward. "I know what you are," I said, my voice steady. "You're nothing but a coward. You feed off people's fears because you're too weak to face your own." The room grew colder as the entity snarled in response, its power pulsing through every corner of the room. But I stood my ground and continued speaking with conviction. "You're afraid of love, aren't you? You're afraid of what it can do, how it can make you vulnerable." With each word, I felt the entity's hold weakening. It snarled, its presence flickering and flashing throughout the room. "You think you're powerful. You think you can control us. Well, you're wrong. Love is stronger than fear. It's stronger than any darkness you can conjure up. It's what gives us hope. It's what keeps us going even when everything else seems lost." As I spoke, the candles in the room flared, but I sensed the entity's power ebbing. I was making progress, so I pressed on. "You can't win against love. You can fight it all you want, but it'll always be there, ready to heal and save. So go ahead, do your worst. We'll still be here, standing strong, because love is what makes us human." With a final burst of light, the candles blew out, leaving me standing in the darkness. I had won. The evil presence was gone. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling the weight of the battle lift from my shoulders. I turned and walked towards the door, my heart racing with adrenaline and relief. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, I heard a low chuckle behind me. "Well done, mortal," a voice whispered in my ear. "But don't get too comfortable. Other shadows are waiting to claim you." I spun around, but there was no one there, only the empty room, shrouded in darkness. I knew then that my battle was far from over. The entity may have been banished, but its kind still lurked in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. I stood tall and unafraid, my heart filled with love and determination. The darkness had once controlled me, but now I controlled it. As I left the apartment, I felt its presence still lingering, but I no longer feared it. Months passed as I traveled the world, seeking out others who were lost in the darkness. With every person I helped, the entity's grip weakened, but I knew better than to let my guard down. It was always lurking, waiting for its opportunity to strike again. And when it did, I was ready. Love and determination were a powerful shield against its attacks. With each victory, the darkness grew weaker until finally, it seemed to disappear completely. But I remained vigilant, knowing that it could resurface at any moment. And when it did, I would be there to face it head-on, armed with nothing but my unwavering determination and the boundless power of love. For in a world consumed by darkness, it was the only weapon strong enough to bring light back into our lives. As I walked down the street, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in myself. I was a warrior for love, and I was making a difference in the world, one person at a time. But just as I was lost in my thoughts, I heard a low growl coming from the nearby alley. Without hesitation, I pulled out my trusty knife and crept towards the sound. As I neared the entrance to the alley, I saw a dark figure lurking in the shadows. It was a demon, sent by the entity to try and stop me, but I would not be deterred. With a fierce battle cry, I charged toward the demon, my knife raised high. The demon snarled and lunged towards me, but I dodged its attack and thrust my blade deep into its chest. The demon howled in pain, but I did not stop. I kept slicing and stabbing until the creature lay motionless on the ground. Breathing heavily, I wiped the blood from my blade and looked around. But to my horror, I realized that I had been surrounded by a group of demons. They were closing in on me, their glowing eyes filled with malice and hunger. I did not falter. I stood my ground, ready to defend myself with all the strength and courage I possessed. The demons charged towards me, their claws slashing through the air with deadly accuracy. But I was fast and agile, dodging their attacks and striking back with my knife. Soon, the ground was littered with demon corpses, and the survivors retreated into the shadows. With my heart racing and adrenaline still coursing through my veins, I took a deep breath and steadied myself. For I was a true warrior, ready to battle for what was right and just. With my back to the graffiti-covered alley, I gazed ahead toward the unknown challenges that lay in wait, but I refused to let fear consume me. The weight of my blade on my hip and fierce determination in my heart was all I needed. Love and a burning purpose to protect fueled my steps as I marched forward, ready to face any obstacle that dared to stand in my way. Bloodborne Legacy. Hemlock Creek was a forgotten land, where eerie silence laced the air like a deadly poison, and whispers slithered through gnarled branches like serpents. In the suffocating stillness, Eliza yearned for a symphony to break the monotony. Her fingers traced the dusty shelves of her grandmother Nana's attic, coming to rest on a weathered grimoire hidden in a musty trunk. A forbidden energy hummed from its leather cover, drawing her closer with each passing moment until she could resist no longer. As she opened its pages, tales of powerful women who could bend shadows and command storms flooded her mind, igniting a fire within her that burned with endless possibilities. A tantalizing blend of curiosity and rebellion coursed Eliza's veins. Under the cloak of star-dusted nights, she delved into the mysteries and secrets hidden within the grimoire's lines. With each incantation, a surge of power flowed through her body, a dark energy that entangled itself in her soul. She started with simple spells, conjuring delicate wildflowers and coaxing stray cats with whispered enticements. But as she delved deeper into the forbidden knowledge, A sinister thrill fueled her desire for more dangerous magic. Eliza's deepest desires spun into existence, and a kaleidoscope of vivid dreams danced before her eyes. A vase, once shattered and forgotten, stood whole, and after years of secret longing, a forbidden love finally confessed their feelings. But as Eliza basked in the glow of her manifested wishes, the shadows in the corners of her mind began to distort, taking on monstrous forms like fiercely crouched wolves. The wind, once a gentle lullaby, hissed ominous warnings in a language she could not decipher, and Nana, usually so wise and serene, displayed a palpable fear as she whispered cryptic cautions about the ravenous hunger that lurks within great power and the steep price it demands for illicit desires. As Eliza explored more of the worn pages of the grimoire, she felt a connection to her ancestors and their powerful legacy. Through the intricate tapestry of her bloodline, she uncovered women who were shunned and feared due to their ability to wield powerful and potentially dangerous magic. They had summoned an ancient force, a being shrouded in whispers and shadows, hungry for not only obedience, but a merging of blood and power. The contents of the pages were both tempting and unnerving, immersing Eliza in the twisted past of her family. The price manifested, revealing itself in chilling and violent ways. A neighbor's cow was discovered with its throat savagely ripped open, the ground beneath it bearing an ominous crimson sigil. Whispers of a cursed swamp circulated among the villagers, and Eliza's childhood friend became one of its victims, disappearing without a trace. As time passed, Eliza's nightmares seeped into reality, tormenting her with horrific visions of a skeletal creature with eyes like burning embers, its raspy voice tempting her with promises of power in exchange for her very soul. A lingering sense of foreboding intensified with each passing day. With a heavy heart and mounting dread, Eliza was consumed by the need to break the binding between herself and the entity. Scouring the grimoire's pages, she uncovered a cryptic ritual of reversal, a desperate attempt at severing the ties to her ancestors. In the dim light of the waning moon, Eliza stood amidst the eerie stillness of the forbidden swamp, surrounded by twisted cypress trees. Eliza's rhythmic chanting echoed through the misty swamp, awakening the forest surrounding her. With each beat, she felt herself becoming one with the murky waters. The shadows twisted and writhed, taunting her with their bony fingers, daring her to keep moving ahead. Suddenly, it materialized before her, a monstrous creature composed of bleached white bones that intertwined and jutted out at odd angles. Evil seeped from the being's very core, enveloping it in a shroud of darkness. Its eyes were two burning embers, malevolent, unblinking, and fixed on Eliza, its mouth a gaping hollow of jagged teeth. Its relentless whispers filled Eliza's mind, promising unimaginable power if she surrendered to its will. Yet within her, the same blood that had first bound her to the creature now roared with defiance. A blaze ignited within her depths, a tangible force that filled Eliza with an aura of furious energy, a strength she hadn't known existed. As the entity lunged toward her, its skeletal appendages outstretched, she met its gaze, shouting the final words of the incantation into the still night air. The reaction was immediate. A blinding light blanketed both Eliza and the entity, forging a radiant barrier between the two. The whispering wind became a cyclone of electricity, stirring up the stagnant swamp water and tearing at the gnarled roots of the trees. The sigil beneath her feet glowed like molten iron, radiating an intense heat that seeped into her bones. As the haunting melody of Eliza's voice filled the air, tendrils of shimmering light emerged from her outstretched hands, coiling tighter around the monster. Its ghostly form writhed and thrashed, trapped by the otherworldly chains that bound it. The monster's piercing shrieks echoed through the dark forest as it fought against the entrapment, but Eliza's song remained unyielding. Drawing on every last reserve of strength she possessed and calling upon the spirits of her ancestors, Eliza strained against the magical chains connecting her to the beast. The descendants' voices joined hers, rising in a defiant chorus, pushing back the shadows of the swamp. The creature's eyes flared bright one last time before it began to dissolve, consumed by the brilliant inferno summoned by Eliza's sorcery. Eliza and the creature collapsed onto the ground, a faint spark of electricity still linking them together. The entity's ethereal form trembled with fury, its claws extended and its eyes glowing red. But as it lunged towards Eliza, she stood firm with her back straight, her chin lifted. The power of generations of witches flowed through her veins, making her impervious to the creature's rage. Eliza raised her hand, the air around her thickening. A loud crack resounded through the swamp, sending birds scattering into the sky. The entity let out a clamorous roar as Eliza's power shattered it into countless pieces. The fragments dissolved into hushed whispers that dissipated on the breeze. Lowering her hand, Eliza took a deep breath, feeling her connection to the being finally severed. Eliza fell to her knees, drained from the intense battle. However, she felt a sense of triumph as she had conquered challenges that she once thought were insurmountable. The heart pounded in her chest, the sound of the entity's final screams echoing in her ears. She felt the swamp closing in around her, the whispers and taunts of a moment earlier replaced by the gentle rustling of reeds and the distant croaking of frogs. All was calm and in balance, the silence itself a soothing balm. The energy within Eliza ebbed, retreating into the depths of her being, her connection to her ancestors stronger than before. She cast a final glance at the spot where the entity had been, but all that remained was swirling fog, nature's unseen force spinning the vapors. The grimoire's teachings had not been in vain. She had wielded them with skill and courage in the face of a formidable enemy. A chilling discovery marred Eliza's triumphant return home. Nana, her beloved caretaker and only true family, lay lifeless in her bed. Her thin frame bore the burden of Eliza's rebellion against the malevolent forces that had corrupted their once peaceful town. In Hemlock Creek, the air was thick with an ominous dread, its secrets so terrifying that even the bravest souls dared not speak of them. Deep within Eliza's very essence, an ember of the entity's insatiable hunger still burned, promising to claim the next generation as its sacrificial prey. The victory was won, but at what cost? Mirrored mayhem. The Viridian mirror was delivered on a noisy truck, a gilded monstrosity that seemed to come from another time. Its silver frame was tarnished and decorated with carved gargoyles, giving the illusion of mirth, but emanating a cold aura from its warped surface. To the Miller family, it was an unusual inheritance, a whimsical addition to their comfortable home. Little did they know, hidden within the mirror's shimmering depths was a menacing presence, a malevolent jester known as Grimaldi, who was bound to a world of darkness. In the dead of night, when the house was quiet and still, faint whispers would creep through the empty hallways like a chill wind. The unsettling sound of giggles echoed off the walls, causing Sarah, the eldest, to shudder in her bed. Objects would shift and move as if being touched by unseen hands. At first, Sarah dismissed it as her overactive imagination, but then she saw it. Her reflection in the Viridian glass shimmered with an eerie light, and within her own image, there was a flicker of a malevolent grin that seemed to be taunting her from another plane of existence. A cold fear gripped Sarah as she realized that she was not alone in this house, and whatever resided there had dark intentions. As David stumbled through the maze of his home office, his own laughter echoed back at him, chilling and mocking. Lucy woke to find her beloved stuffed animals transformed into horrifying caricatures, their once comforting eyes now filled with sinister glee, and the eerie green reflections in the Viridian mirror seemed to come alive, taunting the family with their deepest fears and insecurities, turning their anxieties into tangible nightmares. The Millers, driven by their desperate need to understand and confront their tormentor, delved into dusty archives filled with whispers of the mirror's dark history. After much searching, they uncovered a forgotten carnival, now swallowed by shadows and long abandoned after a devastating fire. The Viridian, they learned, was the portal through which Grimaldi, the vengeful master of the carnival, entered their world. Despite the warnings and dangers, the Millers' morbid curiosity compelled each of them to touch the smooth surface of the mirror. In an instant, they were transported to a twisted carnival shrouded in an eerie twilight. Rusty rides creaked and groaned with otherworldly laughter, while spectral balloons glowed with an unnatural light. And there, standing before them, was Grimaldi, a nightmare come to life, his form sculpted from malevolent shadows and fueled by unquenchable hunger. He was a grotesque parody of a jester, his crimson grin stretched from ear to ear, a stark contrast against his soot-blackened skin. His eyes, two burning coals set deep in their sockets, bore into them with a hunger for fear and terror. They were no longer in control, mere puppets dangling on the strings of his warped reality. Sarah's deepest fear manifested before her, a failure as an artist brought to life in the form of a monstrous, sentient canvas that devoured her every brushstroke. David was forced to confront his inadequacy as a father when a spectral child appeared before him, accusing him of neglect. Lucy was transported to a playground of nightmares where her once beloved stuffed animals writhed in eternal torment. The air was thick with the stench of decay and despair, amplifying the horror of their twisted reflections. As their fear threatened to overwhelm them, a spark of defiance ignited within each of them. Sarah's memories of her love for art burned brighter than her doubts as she used her charcoal like a torch, erasing the monstrous canvas before her. David mustered the courage to apologize and repair his fractured bond with his daughter as they clutched onto one another, a shield against the encroaching shadows. And Lucy, with a burst of childish bravery, tore apart the stitched seams of her nightmares, freeing the imprisoned souls within and reclaiming her power over fear. The carnival ground trembled beneath their feet as they battled. Grimaldi, his face twisted with anger and fear, conjured up shadows that slithered and swirled around them. But the Millers stood strong, their hands glowing with a golden light as they pushed back against the dark magic. Amidst the chaos, Sarah's eyes caught a glint of green from within Grimaldi's chest. She knew it was the source of his power, a shard of the Viridian gemstone. With determination fueling her actions, she lunged towards him and slammed her hand against his chest. The shard shattered into pieces, causing Grimaldi to let out an ear-piercing scream as he dissipated into a thick black mist, being pulled back into the depths of the Viridian. The carnival was finally free from his clutches. As the Millers stumbled through the swirling vortex of lights and shadows, they held to one another's hands. The carnival music grew fainter, and the distorted realm faded into wispy tendrils of smoke. Finally, they stumbled back through the mirror and collapsed onto their living room floor, gasping for breath. But even as they celebrated their victory over Grimaldi and his twisted dimension, a chill ran down Sarah's spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As she gazed into the murky depths of the Viridian, she felt a cold chill run down her spine. In the reflection, a faint glimmer of an ominous smile appeared, a haunting reminder that Grimaldi's darkness still lurked within the mirror, biding its time to ensnare its next unsuspecting prey. Though they had defeated him once, his malevolence remained, ready to pounce on any who dared peer into its cursed surface. Fractured Echoes. Emilia Thorne, a young and passionate artist, inherited a crumbling Italian villa that stood tall against the rolling hills. It was shrouded in whispers of tragedy, its walls steeped in dark secrets. Legend had it that within its decaying halls hung a cursed portrait, its veiled figure promising power at a gruesome price. Emilia, fueled by ambition and a thirst for inspiration, couldn't resist the pull towards the villa's mysteries. As she wandered through its corridors, she sensed the weight of history bearing down on her shoulders. But it was the portrait that drew her in like a moth to flame. Shrouded in swaths of crimson silk, it dominated the grand hall with an air of mystery and danger. Emilia felt a magnetic pull toward it, her fingers itching to tear away the veil and uncover the secrets it held. And one moonlit night, she succumbed to temptation, the silk yielding to her touch with a whispering rustle. Gasped breaths and flickering candlelight revealed a woman, breathtakingly beautiful with eyes like onyx pools. But there was something off about her, something that sent chills down Emilia's spine. It was her smile, wide and crimson-stained, that seemed to taunt Emilia from within the painting's frame. And as she stared into those haunting eyes, Emilia knew that she had uncovered something far beyond what she had bargained for. As Emilia peered closer at the portrait, she saw that the woman's eyes were not just shadows, but held an inhuman glow. The nameplate below read, Olivia Thorne, and beneath it, a chilling inscription, "The blood of those who gaze upon me is my sustenance." Curiosity morphed into obsession as Emilia researched her ancestors' life, uncovering dark secrets of forbidden arts and a rumored pact with the shadows. It was said that Olivia Thorne was not simply a painter, but also a vampire, using the villa's guests to maintain her eternal youth and powers. And the portrait? It wasn't just a canvas, but a conduit for Olivia's spirit to feed. As Emilia delved deeper, she heard Olivia's whispers in her dreams, promising unimaginable beauty and power in exchange for a single sip of crimson. Repulsed at first, Emilia couldn't help but feel an unnerving pull toward the darkness. but hunger grew like a serpent inside her, hissing in agreement with Olivia's promises. One night, unable to resist any longer, Emilia pricked her finger and let a single drop of blood fall onto the image of Olivia's painted lips. In an instant, the portrait crackled with electricity, and Olivia's eyes flared bright red. Emilia's heart raced as she gazed at the full moon, feeling a surge of energy course through her veins. The world came alive in a new way, with every scent and sound heightened. But this newfound power came at a grisly cost, the insatiable hunger for blood. Each night, Emilia prowled the villa grounds, seeking out unsuspecting guests to quell her thirst. But with each feeding, fear and guilt consumed her, distorting her reflection into a demon-eyed fiend. In the portrait on the wall, Olivia's sinister smile seemed to widen. The more Emilia's humanity slipped away, Olivia continued to whisper temptations of greater power, of making the entire village a hunting ground. The artist and the vampire were intertwined now, two sides of the same dark coin dancing under the moonlight. And then one fateful night, a young couple wandered into their lair, unaware of the danger lurking within. The young couple, John and Elena, had been exploring the villa's grounds, drawn by its eerie beauty and the legends that whispered on the breeze. As they stepped into the grand hall, the painting caught their attention. John couldn't shake the feeling that there was something familiar about the woman's face, so hauntingly beautiful, yet twisted by an inhuman hunger. Elena studied the portrait uneasily, her intuition urging her to leave. As they hesitated, Emilia emerged from the shadows, a seductive smile playing on her lips. Her once vibrant features now leached of color, eyes glowing crimson as she regarded her prey. John's heart skipped a beat when he saw her resemblance to Olivia. Was it a family resemblance or something more sinister? As Emilia closed in on them, fangs bared, Elena grabbed a dagger from the sheath on her hip, slashing the painting, screaming for John to run. Olivia's image screamed in agony, her power momentarily severed. In their frenzied escape, the couple stumbled upon a hidden library brimming with tomes on vampirism. Dusty pages revealed a way to break the curse. The blood of a willing Thorn family member must be spilled upon the portrait's veiled figure during a lunar eclipse. Emilia pursued them relentlessly, her cries echoing through the corridors like the howls of a trapped beast. But tonight was Destiny's dance, and the moon hung heavy in the sky like a bloody orb, a lunar eclipse at its zenith. John and Elena somehow ended back where they had started. They stood back to back, swords drawn as they faced the vampire Emilia. The moon shone through the stained glass windows, casting an eerie red glow over the grand hall, illuminating the tattered portrait of the long-dead queen. Emilia's fangs glistened in the light as she crept closer, her eyes fixed on her prey. Glancing down, John's hand shook as he read the ancient family crest carved into the marble floor. It read, "In blood we rise, in blood we fall." John's heart pounded in his chest as he met Elena's terrified gaze, for he knew what he must do. He nodded and she understood, for he wasn't just another vampire hunter, he was also a Thorn, a descendant of the fierce bloodline known for its ties to the dark and undead. But tonight, he had not come to fulfill his supposed duty. His true purpose was to protect the lineage by offering himself as a sacrifice to save them all from extinction. In a final act of love, John thrust the glistening blade into his own heart, the cold steel piercing the flesh and bone. A crimson stream splattered across the intricate details of the canvas, each drop forming its own brushstroke, adding depth and emotion to the already haunting masterpiece. As his life ebbed away, John's blood seeped into every crevice and corner of the canvas, forever merging his essence with the art he so cherished. Olivia's ethereal form let out a blood-curdling scream as her image disintegrated. The once beautiful portrait blazed with an intense fire, reducing Olivia's likeness to nothing but ash. And with the destruction of the painting, the curse itself lifted and dissipated into the air. Emilia's body crumpled to the ground, her legs giving way from exhaustion. She gasped for breath, feeling the weight of humanity settle back into her bones. As the sun rose, its blinding rays brought with it a sense of hope and rebirth. John's selfless act had bestowed upon them the chance at redemption, a priceless gift that Emilia and Elena would never forget. Vowing to repair the villa and unravel the darkness Olivia had woven into its very foundation, the two women forged a bond. Together they embarked on a new journey, determined to restore the reputation of the Thorne family and transform it into a beacon of hope and radiance, rising from the ruins of despair, grief, and shadow. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Thank you for watching.